Okay, we saw first three module flows, ideas, IPS, firewall, and honeypot concepts, ideas, IPS, firewall, and honeypot solutions, evading ideas. Now we will go to the fourth module flow, which is evading firewall. So in that first, we'll see about firewall identification. So before evading firewall, we need to identify the firewalls, and then we should go for the evading techniques. So let's see what is a firewall identification. So there are three methods to identify the firewall: port scanning, firewalking, and banner grabbing. So port scanning is used to open ports and services running on these ports. Port scanning is used to identify open ports and services running on the open ports. Open ports can be further probed to identify the version of services, which helps in finding vulnerabilities in these services. Some firewalls will uniquely identify themselves in response to simple port scans. For example, Checkpoint's Firewall 1 listens on TCP ports 256, 257, 258, and 259. Microsoft's proxy server listens on TCP ports 1080 and 1745. Next identification technique, a firewall identification technique is firewalking. Firewalking is a technique that uses TTL values to determine gateway ACL filters, and it maps networks by analyzing the IP packet responses. Attacker sends a UDP or a TCP packet to the targeted firewall with a TTL set to one hop greater than that of a firewall. If the packet makes it through the gateway, it is forwarded to the next hop where the TTL equals 1 and elicits an ICMP TTL exceeded in transmit to be returned as the original packet is discarded. This method helps to locate a firewall. Additional probing permits fingerprinting and identification of vulnerabilities. Firewalk is a well-known application used for firewalking. It has two phases, a network discovery phase and a scanning phase. It comes with various open source Linux distributions. Nmap has a firewalk script that can be used to perform firewalking. Then the next firewall identification technique is banner grabbing. Banner grabbing is a simple method of fingerprinting that helps in detecting the vendor of a firewall and the firmware version. It identifies the service running on the system. The three primary services that send out banners are FTP, Telnet, and web servers. An example of SMTP banner grabbing is Telnet mail.targetcompany.org 25. So after identifying the firewall, let's go through the evading techniques. The first technique is IP address spoofing. IP address spoofing is a hijacking technique in which an attacker masquerades as a trusted host to conceal his or her identity. It can be used to spoof a website, hijack browsers, or gain unauthorized access to a network. Attackers modify the addressing information in the IP packet header and the source address bit fields in order to bypass the firewall. Source routing. Two types: loose source routing and strict source routing. In loose source routing, the sender specifies one or more stages that the packet must go through. In strict source routing, the sender specifies the exact route the packet must go through. As you can see in the below figure, it shows one of the example of a source routing where the originator dictates the eventual route of the traffic. As you can see, the attacker has avoided the route where a firewall is present, and then he has taken an alternate route B, C, D, E to avoid the firewall. So the next technique to evade firewall is tiny fragments. Attackers create tiny fragments of outgoing packets, forcing some of the TCP packets header information into the next fragment. The IDS filter rules that specify patterns will not match with the fragmented packets due to broken header information. The attack will succeed if the filtering router examines only the first fragment and allows all other fragments to pass through. This attack is used to avoid user-defined filtering rules and works when the firewall checks only for the TCP header information. A bypass blocked site using an IP address in place of a URL. This method involves typing the IP address directly into the browser's address bar in place of typing the blocked website's domain name. Use services such as host to IP to find the IP address of the blocked website. Oh, where is this? This method fails if blocking software tracks the IP address sent to the web server. This is obvious. If the IDS blocks based on the IP address also, then this method will be useless. Okay, bypass blocked sites using anonymous website surfing sites. There are many online anonymizer services that enable anonymous surfing on the internet. Some websites provide options to encrypt the URLs of the websites. These services hide the actual IP address of the surfer and enable bypassing the IP-based firewall filter rules. Example, www.free-proxy.com, anonymous-proxy.servers.net, spysurfing.com, and so on. Bypass firewall using a proxy server. Steps to be followed to bypass a firewall using a proxy server. Find an appropriate proxy server. In the tools menu of any internet browser, go to proxy settings, and in the internet properties dialog box, under connection tab, click LAN settings. Under LAN settings, click on the use a proxy server for your LAN checkbox. In the address box, type the IP address of the proxy server. In the port box, type the port number that is used by the proxy server for client connections. By default, 8080 is the port number. Click to select the bypass proxy server for local addresses checkbox if you do not want the proxy server computer to be used when connected to a computer on local network. Click OK to close the LAN settings dialog box. Click OK again to close the internet property dialog box. Okay, next technique, bypass firewalls through ICMP tunneling method. ICMP tunneling allows tunneling a backdoor shell in the data portion of ICMP echo packets. RFC 792, which delineates IP operations, do not define what should go in the data portion. The payload portion is arbitrary and is not examined by most of the firewalls. Thus, any data can be inserted in the payload portion of ICMP packet, including a backdoor application. Some administrators keep ICMP open on their firewall because it is useful for tools like ping and trace route. Assuming that ICMP is allowed through a firewall, use low-key ICMP tunneling to execute commands of choice by tunneling them inside the payload of the ICMP echo packets. And then next technique is bypass firewalls through the ACK tunneling method. ACK tunneling allows tunneling a backdoor application with TCP packets with the ACK bit set. The ACK bit is used to acknowledge the receipt of a packet. Some firewalls do not check packets with ACK bit set because ACK bits are supposed to be used in response to legitimate traffic. Tools such as ACK command can be used to implement ACK tunneling. Bypassing firewalls through HTTP tunneling method. HTTP tunneling technology allows attackers to perform various internet tasks despite the restrictions imposed by firewalls. This method can be implemented if the target company has a public web server with port 80 or 443 used for HTTP traffic that is unfiltered on its firewall. Encapsulates data inside HTTP traffic. For instance, consider that an organization's firewall restricts users from accessing all ports except 80 and 443, and a user may want to use FTP. So HTTP tunneling will enable the use of FTP via the HTTP protocol. Why do I need HTTP tunneling? HTTP tunneling is used in scenarios in which network users are granted restricted connectivity through a firewall or proxy. In such conditions, some applications may also lack native communication support. HTTP tunneling tools, HTTP port and HTTP port and HTTP host. HTTP port allows you to bypass your HTTP proxy, which is blocking you from the internet. It allows you to use various internet software behind the proxy, such as email, instant messengers, P2P file sharing, ICQ, news, FTP, or IRC. Um, Super Network Tunnel, a two-way HTTP tunnel software connecting two computers. Super Network Tunnel is a tool just like HTTP port and HTTP host. HTTP port and HTTP host. A two-way HTTP tunnel software connecting two computers. It works like VPN tunneling but uses HTTP protocol to establish a connection. Bypass firewalls through SSH tunneling method. SSH protocol tunneling involves sending unencrypted network traffic through an SSH tunnel. For example, suppose you want to transfer files on an encrypted FTP protocol, but the FTP protocol is blocked on the target firewall. The unencrypted data can be sent over the encrypted SSH protocol using SSH tunneling. Attackers use this tunneling to bypass firewall restrictions. They connect to external SSH servers and create SSH tunnels to port 80 on the remote server, thereby passing firewall restrictions. Attackers use OpenSSH to encrypt and tunnel all traffic from a local machine to a remote machine to avoid detection by premier security controls. OpenSSH is a set of computer programs that provide encrypted communication sessions over a computer network using the SSH protocol. Example, as you can see here, you use SSH -f user at certified ethical hacker.com dash capital L 5000 colon certified hacker.com colon 25 dash n. So here hyphen f is used to specify it's a background mode. User certified hacker.com is a username and server you are logging into. Hyphen capital L 500 hyphen certified hacker.com hyphen 25. It is nothing but the local port colon host and the remote port. So we are specifying the 5000 is the local port, certifiedhacker.com is the host to which we are connecting using SSH, and 25 is the remote port. So dash in used to specify do not execute the command on remote system. SSH tunneling tools, bitwise BITWISE and secure pipes. So these are the two tools that are specified for SSH tunneling, bitwise and secure pipes. Bypass firewalls through DNS tunneling method. DNS operates using user datagram protocol, and it has 255 byte limit on outbound queries. This small size constraint on external queries allows the DNS to be used as an ideal choice to perform data exfiltrations by various malicious entities. Since corrupt or malicious data can be secretly embedded into DNS protocol packets, even DNSSEC cannot detect this abnormality in the DNS tunneling. It is effectively used by malware to bypass the firewall to maintain communication between the victim machine and CNC server. Tools such as NSTX, Heyoka, HEYOKA, and Iodine use this technique of tunneling to traffic across DNS port 53. Bypass firewalls through external systems. Steps. Legitimate user works with some external system to access the corporate network. Attacker sniffs the user traffic and steals the session ID and cookies. Attacker accesses the corporate network by bypassing the firewall and gets the Windows ID of the running Mozilla process on the user system. Attacker then issues an open URL command to the found window. User's web browser is redirected to the attacker's web server. The malicious code embedded in the attacker's web page is downloaded and executed on the user's machine. Bypassing firewall through MITM attacks. In MITM attacks, attackers make use of DNS servers and routing techniques to bypass firewall restrictions. The attacker performs DNS server poisoning. User A sends a request for www.certifiedhacker.com to corporate DNS server. The corporate DNS server sends the IP address 127.22.16.64 of the attacker. User A accesses the attacker's malicious server. The attacker connects with the real host and tunnels the user's HTTP traffic. The malicious codes embedded in the attacker's web page are downloaded and executed on the user's machine. Bypass firewall using content. In this method, the attacker sends the content containing malicious code to the user and tricks him or her to open it so that the malicious code can be executed. Examples: sending an email containing a malicious executable file or Microsoft Office document capable of a macro bypass exploit. There are many file formats that can be used as malicious content carrier. Bypass web application firewall using XXS attack. So WAF, that is nothing but the web application firewall, and cross-site scripting attack exploits vulnerabilities that occur while processing input parameters of end users and the server responses in the web application. Attackers inject malicious HTML code in the victim website to bypass the WAF. Consider the following XSS payload: script alert. In the parenthesis, we give string XSS and close the script. This will be blocked by the WAF. To bypass, the following methods can be used: using ASCII values to bypass WAF. After replacing excess payload with equivalent ASCII values. So, example string, script, open script, use function string from char code and then pass the arguments 97, 108. 97 is the ASCII value of A, 108 is ASCII value of L, and so on. Close the script. So we are using ASCII equivalent of alert parenthesis double quote XSS double quote parenthesis, and then so firewall will not detect this. Web application firewall will not detect this. So similarly, using hex coding to bypass the WAF. So this is an example of using the Xcoding, using obfuscation to pass the web application firewall. So this is how we obfuscate the script. Instead of script alert XSS close script, we change the cases of some letters. Okay, next module flow is IDS firewall evading tools. During firewall evasion, attackers use various security auditing tools that assesses firewall behavior. This section lists some of these tools that help attackers to bypass firewall restrictions. They automate the process by bypassing firewall rules while increasing effectiveness and consuming less time. Traffic IQ Professional. Traffic IQ Professional is a tool that audits and validates the behavior of security devices by generating the standard application traffic or attack traffic between two virtual machines. This tool is generally used by security professionals for assessing, auditing, and testing the behavioral characteristics of any non-proxy packet filtering device, which can include application firewalls, IDS, IPS, routers, switches, etc. However, as this tool can generate custom attack traffic, it is extensively employed by attackers to bypass the installed perimeter devices in the target network. So some of the additional ideas firewall evasion tools are Nmap, Metasploit, Inundator, IDS evasion, Hyperion, etc. Um, Packet fragment generator tools, Colasoft Packet Builder. Some additional packet generator tools are listed below: ComView, NetScan Tools Pro, Ostinato, WAN Killer, WireEdit. Okay, in the next video we will see detecting the honeypots.